All right, we're talking wide receivers at USC with Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles. So we're breaking down every position for the Trojans, getting you set for August camp 2017. Nick, let's talk wide receivers. Deonte Burnett, capable guy, productive guy, but in that 2 or 3 spot until, bam, the Rose Bowl. 13 catches, 3 touchdowns, and he's a star. Maybe that's going to raise the expectations for a lot of people in viewing Deonte Burnett. You have some interesting things that we just talked about concerning some fits that need to be worked out in regards to outside roles versus inside versus the best players or the best groupings on the field. So kind of give us a feel for Burnett and the way this shakes out for the top 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, so Deonte Burnett, I think, is probably Sam Darnold's favorite target to throw the ball to. It's the guy he's looking for. They kind of came up on the scout team together, so he's very comfortable with Burnett. The problem is Burnett's more of a slot receiver, not really like a wide receiver 1 type of guy, so it's a little weird if your quarterback's favorite target isn't at wide receiver 1. So Deonte Burnett's there, and then also Stephen Mitchell, who is probably the most experienced wide receiver on this unit because it's very talented but insanely young. Mitchell is coming off an injury, and he's, it's going to be tough for him because he's also a slot receiver. So you've got your most experienced wide receiver who has shown probably the most production over the course of his college career, and your quarterback's favorite target, sort of both kind of crammed into that slot role, while at the same time your star wide receiver 1, Juju Smith-Schuster, you're trying to replace. And so you've got talent to do it, but your sort of 2 go-to guys are kind of stuck in your slot role, which is not your sort of primary receiving target on most reads. So it's going to be interesting to see where they move them around. Now, as far as your outside receivers, which your typical wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, Michael Pittman and Tyler Vaughn's probably going to come in at those roles right now. The one thing I will say about the USC wide receivers is that there is a ton of talent, but everyone's very young. Redshirt freshmen, true freshmen, couple of sophomores. So there's a lot of talent, but it's also a lot of sort of unproven talent. And so you look at Michael Pittman, he's coming in as a sophomore. Last year, he only had 6 catches for about 82 yards. He showed a ton of promise. He was brought in on special teams as well. He is progressed nicely. He came in last year. Once Darnold really started to spread the ball out, you saw his production go up. So he could come in as your wide receiver 1. Again, still very early. This might not, that depth chart might still keep changing and moving well into the season. It's tough to say. And then sort of on the other side, you're going to have Tyler Vaughn's, a redshirt freshman. He was a 5-star recruit, possibly a 4, depending on who you ask. He was the 3rd best wide receiver in the entire nation in his class when he came in. You don't want to put this sort of expectations on a kid too early, but his offensive coordinator, T. Martin, has flat out said this is probably the shiftiest receiver he's seen at USC since Marquise Lee. That's a pretty high bar. That's a pretty bold claim to make. But if that's the case, I'm not, could he be the next Marquise Lee? I don't know. I'm not going to say that, but T. Martin seems to be very high on Tyler Vaughn's. He's another guy that's shown a lot of progress, came in with a ton of talent. He's already getting this, best since Marquise Lee tag pinned on him. That's going to be tough to do for him. But right now you're looking at Burnett out of the slot, Pittman at 1, Vaughn's at 2 on the outside. But again, that could keep rotating. Stephen Mitchell, if he could come in and sort of be a steady hand early on, especially as these young guys get their feet wet, he might get moved around out of the slot so that you could have Burnett and Mitchell on the field. But Mitchell's coming off a season-ending injury, knee injury from last season, so who knows where he's going to be at health-wise. You got Josh Imator Bebe, one half of the Imator Bebe brothers. He's coming in, freshman. You got Trevon Sidney. You got Randall Grimes. You got 5-star wide receiver Joseph Lewis, who just came in, was just signed this last recruiting period. You want to, again, for a 5-star recruit like that, when you have this much depth, the impulse will be there to redshirt the guy, but it's going to be hard not to. You've also got USC's third-string quarterback, or fourth, depending on how you want to look at it, Jaylen Green, another of the highly experienced guys. Him and Stephen Mitchell are sort of the old hands on this staff, in this position group anyway. So he's going to come in as like a backup or in the rotation for probably outside receiver 1 or 2. It's tough to say. But with all this young talent, there's two major questions. You'll get production. I'm not too concerned about production out of the wide receiver core, but there's two major questions. One, who sort of emerges from this as the next Juju, as the next go-to guy, as the guy when you have to move the ball 30 feet on third down, who's getting it? Who emerges as that guy? Right now, it seems to be like Deonte Burnett, your slot receiver, is going to get that. But someone else for wide receiver 1 is going to have to show up and do that. So who breaks out of this pack as sort of your most reliable receiver? That's the first thing. And then the second thing, you've got a quarterback in Sam Darnold, who came in, game 4 last year as the starter, just lost his top 2 targets from to the draft or graduation. And he's got this whole new crop of receivers coming in. So the second question is not just who breaks out, but how well are they going to mesh with their new quarterback? Because you got to get everybody on the same page. You got to know where all your guys like the ball, when they want the ball, where they want the ball. Do they like it thrown hard in the gut? Do they like it thrown soft up over the shoulder? So it's just going to take some time for this new crop of wide receivers to come in and just get comfortable with Sam Darnold, and for Sam Darnold to get comfortable for them. I will say this though: player run practices for this unit in particular, and how they work well with the quarterback over the summer, are going to be very crucial. That's the time that quarterback and all of these new wide receivers are really going to start to get comfortable with one another, really start working well as a team. So this is, for this wide receiver unit, it's a very important summer for them and for the passing game in general. I'm not concerned about the talent level, but I am concerned about just sort of getting everyone working as one functional team, and just see who breaks out and who Darnold loves throwing the ball to. So I'm excited to see who emerges from this group. I'm excited to see what this group can prove. I'm excited to see who's taken over Juju's spot. But it's going to be a very busy summer for them, and a very important one. But it should turn out to be pretty amazing results for the USC passing game this season and beyond.
Nick, what I love hearing about Deonte Burnett is that here's a guy, he didn't completely come out of nowhere to catch 13 passes for 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. It's not like he had like 3 career receptions. He was productive, but he was a 3rd or 4th option if you just look at the amount of productivity and catches and yards on the USC wide receiver core. But it's not like he had this huge Rose Bowl and thought, okay, the star's gone, Juju's gone, Darius Rogers is gone, they were ahead of me, and look what I did in the Rose Bowl. I'm the guy. By all accounts, coming out of training camp in the spring, he was remarkable. He came in focused. He ran patterns to precision. He didn't drop a ball. There were reports that he went hundreds of catches without dropping a football, and that he knew his assignments to a T, that he graded perfect on his assignments in addition to just catching the ball. That's extremely impressive coming off the Rose Bowl that he had, that he thought, okay, yes, I want to prove to be that guy all the time. And then he went out and did it during the spring. That's a tribute to him. Stephen Mitchell, you mentioned him as a steady hand, and that's exactly what he was at the point that he was injured about halfway through October against Arizona. Nothing spectacular, only had 1 touchdown catch, but had 24 receptions. So he was on his way to a 50-catch season at that point. And then we hear great things about Pittman. Deonte Burnett, in characterizing him, just said, this guy is probably the most physical receiver we have, 6'4", 210. So he's got the measurements, but we haven't gotten a chance to see him do it against big-time competition. As you mentioned, just 6 receptions last year. But apparently against his teammates on the other side of the ball, he's showing that he uses that frame to his advantage, and he's a big physical receiver. So the position is stacked. And as you mentioned, it would be great if Joseph Lewis didn't even have to factor into it. Not good for him, but good for USC's outlook going beyond 2018 if Joseph Lewis doesn't have to be used, the stud out of L.A. It's a wide receiver position that's stacked, inexperienced, but stacked, as you mentioned. Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles breaking down wide receivers with us. We are looking at each and every position for USC as we head toward August. Nick, it's always a good discussion.
Of course, Mark, anytime.